Deeper Cinema presents the best actors from 1895 to 1919. In 10th place, Douglas Fairbanks for When the Clouds Roll By. Before becoming a swashbuckling and matinee hero, Douglas Fairbanks was already famous and oozing charm all over the place, as he does here in When the Clouds Roll By. In this film he plays Daniel Boone Brown, a hilariously superstitious man who is also a victim of a doctor experiment. Fairbanks really commands the picture with ease. He was a total star if there ever was one, making everybody constantly paying attention to him and loving him throughout the film. A very talented man, he was also an uncredited scriptwriter here, as he did in many other movies in which he usually used a pseudonym. It is impressive to remember that he was 38 years old then, since he was super athletic and had a boyish charm and always funny and engaging in this film, getting full marks in not only his usual action scenes, but also in the romantic and superstitious ones as well. Obviously, Douglas Fairbanks would become even more famous later and would be remembered mostly for his classic roles in films such as Robin Hood, The Thief of Baghdad, The Mark of Zorro, or The Black Pirate, among many others. Still, just by watching him perform in When the Clouds Roll By, anyone can get the full measure of how giant on a silver screen this Hollywood legend really was.
In 9th place, Raymond Hatton for The Whispering Chorus. Raymond Hatton was a man with a very long career in cinema that started as far back as 1909 and would curiously finish with a silent small role in the classic In Cold Blood in 1967. In The Whispering Chorus he plays John Tremble, a desperate man who fakes his death and later has to deal with the guilt of what he's done and what it might change in the lives of many people around him. It is a different film from Cecil B. DeMille, far from his epics or glamorous leading ladies like Gloria Swanson, and Raymond Hatton helps him by showing depth in his performance and a sense of loneliness and regret. Later, inevitably, Raymond Hatton would lose his leading actor status and fade into supporting or bit roles, but he kept working even in TV in the 50s and 60s. He would pass away in 1971, tragically only 5 days after his wife Frances Hatton also died. Their marriage had been one of the longest in Hollywood history, lasting for amazing 62 years.
In 8th place, Julius Falkenstein for The Oyster Princess. Julius Falkenstein had a very charming, witty and funny role in The Oyster Princess, helping Ossie Osvalda and Ernst Lubitsch to keep the ball rolling at all times. An accomplished actor, he was effective both in comedy and also in dramatic roles in important films for Lubitsch, Rennó, and Fritz Lang. He later did a very good transition to sound and was so respected in Germany that even the Nazis gave him a special permit to keep on working in Germany, even though he was Jewish. Unfortunately, he passed away soon after of meningitis in 1933. A prolific actor, he played in almost 200 movies and made his mark in German cinema.
In 7th place, Victor Sjöström for A Man There Was. In another performance with his then mistress Edith Erastoff, Victor Sjöström is the driving force in this film, playing the role of Terry Vigen, a man who loses everything, including his family, after being jailed for trying to get food in a blockade. Sjöström directed himself in this tale of anger and desire for revenge, adapted from a poem by Henrik Ibsen, in what was the most expensive Sweden film up to that time. Fortunately, it was successful and helped Sweden cinema and the career of Sjöström to flourish even more. Sjöström does overplay his hand in a scene here and there, but mostly his powerful performance makes the movie memorable up to this very day.
In 6th place, Robert Harron for True Heart Susie. Robert Harron had one of the first tragic stories of cinema. He had acted in many big pictures for Griffith, such as The Birth of a Nation, Intolerance, and Hearts of the World, and might have become a huge actor in Hollywood history, but unfortunately passed away in very mysterious circumstances in 1920 by a supposedly accidental gunshot wound. A sensitive actor in a time of mostly macho man in movies, Robert Harron was decades ahead of his time, a sort of Montgomery Clift or James Dean of the 1910s. Even though he acted for much bigger pictures for Griffith, it was in the charming but modest True Heart Susie that he excelled as a simple man who is secretly helped by the character of Lillian Gish, but falls for mundane Clarine Seymour and soon realizes his big mistake in marrying her. Here Harren accomplishes a feat of being frail, dreamy and insecure and still gathering sympathy from the women in the film and the audience watching him perform on the screen.
In fifth place, Severin-Mars for Yokus. Severin-Mars was another actor who unfortunately died only a few years after Jacques in 1921 and could have made an even bigger impact in French and world cinema. He was a favorite of director Abel Gance, had played already in the 10th Symphony, and would be present once more in a central role in the gigantic The Wheel, even though the film only premiered after his death. In Jacques, Severin-Mars plays a demanding role of a jealous husband that has to deal with his friend's desire for his wife and his bewilderment of seeing her with a child after coming back from battle, in a sinister story that will mostly melt his heart. Severin-Mars does overacts in some scenes, especially when judged by modern eyes, but he has a strong screen presence and helps to give this powerful film even more menace and also a desire for social understanding and peaceful coexistence.
In fourth place, Lars Hansen for Song of the Scarlet Flower. A star in Sweden's theater for decades, Lars Hansen was also a star in cinema by 1919 and would soon go to America and do important films there as well, such as The Scarlet Letter, Flesh and the Devil and the Wind, until the arrival of the talkies forced him to go back to his native land, due to his thick English accent. In Song of the Scarlet Flower he was booming though, and a perfect leading man, convincing totally as Olof Koskela, a Swedish Don Juan that wants to enjoy life tremendously but who also tries to maintain some integrity, and later regrets some of his past attitudes. Lars Hansen was a natural for this new media that was cinema and proved that he could handle any scene, from ones that demanded charisma and smiles to others in which he had to show how much he regretted his decisions.
In third place, Thomas Meighan for Male and Female. Contrary to his character in Male and Female, Thomas Meighan had been born rich and had a high status in Hollywood at the time. In the film, however, he is William Crichton, the humble and wise butler of the Gloria Swanson family, a man of his time that knew well enough what was his place in society, and that a woman like Gloria's character was completely out of his league. But since the film was an adaptation of The Admirable Crichton, by James Barrie, the same writer of Peter Pan though, a set of events changes completely the power dynamics between the aristocrats and the employees, and they arrive in some sort of an adult Neverland, where everything changes. Meighan is very good in this sort of dual role, a noble serviceman who first learns, and then teaches, how to assert his newfound authority. In a strong cast, Meighan commands the picture and make it even more believable. The film was a success and Cecil B. DeMille would cast Meighan and Swanson again in Why Change Your Wife, in the following year, again a hit with the audience.
In second place, Valdemar Silander for The Clown. Valdemar Silander hadn't such a success in theater because he was judged as having an unimpressive voice, but he understood right away how to succeed in silent pictures. This can be seen in The Clown very easily since Silander was at his peak, a super expressive and authentic actor who added layers to his character, one that could easily had gone down as only an archetype. Silander showed why he was already an accomplished star in Denmark cinema and pretty much in whole Europe, since Danish cinema was very strong back then. Silander had already done more than 80 films and the film is totally his. He dominates the screen from start to finish and shows a star power that very few had then or since. Unfortunately, we can all only imagine the probable gigantic status that he would most likely reach, considering his natural talent in front of the cameras, since he was another of those tragic stories in this era, dying also in strange circumstances as early as 1917. A star had been born and sadly had soon passed away, but when that star shone it eclipsed everyone else. It was true that the man was gone, but at least anyone nowadays can check out Valdemar Silander acting in a simple but beautiful film like The Clown.
Best Actor of the period 1895 to 1919. Victor Sjöström for The Outlaw and His Wife. A legend in Swedish cinema, Sjöström was not only a great director but also an accomplished actor as well, doing very well in both jobs in cinema since 1912, and in The Outlaw and His Wife, as well as many other films, he was also one of the screenwriters. Anyway, as Carrie in this film he was an outlaw who was always on the move, and yet managed to conquer the love of a widow, and together they had to hide from justice again, living secluded in nature. A sense of constant tension and mistrust is always on his face, and we feel the weight on him of this scary way of living. Sjöström had great chemistry with Edith Erastoff both on and off screen, and that also helped the film a lot. In 1918 and the upcoming years, he was at a certain top of the world status as actor and director. That would slowly fade away with the years, as it is bound to happen to almost everyone, but he still would have some success not only in Sweden but also in America, and would always be respected amongst his peers. A master to Ingmar Bergman himself some decades later, it was very fitting that Sjöström would end his acting career almost 40 years later in a major classic Bergman film, and especially acting as an honored professor in Wild Strawberries. A perfect ending of a stellar career, since he had been an acting and directing teacher to all that new generation. Swedish and world cinema as well will always owe Victor Sjöström a lot, a man who showed that cinema could achieve much more than just merely entertain.